Hey guys and girls, Poker King here, back with another Flesh and Blood video. Today we're going to be talking about players, collectors and investors, and which is more important, and do we need all three of them. So when we talk about players, collectors and investors in any card game, there's generally a very big debate really on whether or not we need all three of them. What makes a good card game last? What are the key components to it? Of course, we know that the gameplay, the company actually having vision and understanding how to build a business and scale up, as well as making a card game. There's so many different things involved, but what we're going to talk about today is, are those three things, players, collectors and investors, is any of them more important than the other? So with Flesh and Blood, for a while at the start, there was a lot of investors. Of course, there was a lot of players, but a lot of people were talking about it just being a pump and dump. Obviously, when you've got big names like Saint from Fabled Hunters and Rudy from Alpha Investments, they're big names at the start of Flesh and Blood, talking about this card game. Automatically, people start thinking, well, they must have ulterior motives to be pushing this card game. You know, it can't be because it's a good card game or the lore's great or the company's great. It has to be about pump and dump, to the moon, things like that. But so we had a lot of players, but we also had a significant amount of investors and collectors as well. And for a while that worked. Prices were rising, everything seemed well, and we had very, very highs very quickly. Of course, a lot of card games in 2020 risen very quickly. Pokemon had massive highs, Yu-Gi-Oh as well. You had Dragon Ball Z, Weiss Schwartz, Digimon as well came back. So card games, 2020 was a year of card games really. Flesh and Blood was part of that. So we had the first three sets. We had Crucible of War boxes, not long after release, hitting over $1,000 a box. Of course, then we had Monarch. Now, Monarch, we had a lot of the product that was kept back by distributors, by stores. There was a lot of stuff going on. Channel Fireball was a big part in this, who do like Channel Shop Live now. A lot of people will call them the dead card shop. For the most part, they had a big play in exactly what happened. They were getting a big percentage of Monarch, basically, and they kept a lot back. Prices were artificially risen, and the product seemed scarce. We didn't know at the time how many boxes were printed, so it was 125,000 that we later found out, but that was only after, and of course that's when prices crashed. But it wasn't sustainable for such a long period of time, and we had a lot of players leave because they were like, I can't afford these cards. £100 from Majestic, and I need three of them. Like, this is ridiculous. And then we had the collectors and investors leave. After the Monarch print runs came out, prices crashed across everything. And we had 12 to 18 months of very little growth in Flesh and Blood in terms of prices and the market movement. So we had a lot of people leave. And of course, then it became, for me, it felt like it was 90% players, if not more. It could be even more. Of course, you still had people collecting and investing, but they were a lot less loud about it. I was collecting myself through the whole time. I also played as well. I did a bit of both, as well as a little bit of investing as well. They can all be tied into one thing at the same time, but there are people still that were like, right, this is a player's card game. We don't need collectors. We don't need investors. So do we need all three of them? My opinion is yes. Having come from different other card games where there's a good balance between them all, I see card games like Weiss Schwartz where for a while the player base really did dislike the collector. They disliked people grading the SPs, people trying to sell them for high prices. They remember a lot of these SPs being extremely cheap for a while. They felt like they were being priced out of their own card game. Now, I can understand a lot of people in Flesh and Blood also thinking that as well. I'm not saying the state of Flesh and Blood is absolutely perfect. No card game is. The economy or the market, essentially, what we have with Flesh and Blood is not perfect right now. There are cards that I feel need reprinting. There are areas of the world that there needs to be a bit more focus on. I've highlighted this in other videos before. But we do need all three of them, I think, for Flesh and Blood to strive. Every every step that within Flesh and Blood's history now, the last 4 years, we're going up to From Dusk Till Dawn with a 10th set coming out in the summer, which for a card game people didn't think was going to get past, the pandemic, is absolutely fantastic. And it just shows the vision and the expertise of running a business as well as a living card game such as Flesh and Blood. And we are seeing, we're seeing new hero support in every single set. We're seeing support for old heroes as well, like we've seen in Outsiders with Katsu. So, Flesh and Blood is doing really well. That's not what we're talking about here. But what we're talking about is, does it need players, collectors, and investors? So it does. It really needs all three of those. Players players build their decks. They play. They can win prizes. They can win packs. They can win promos, play mats, etc. A lot of players then, to fund their playing, not just building new decks, when sets come out, or buying other cards because they want to try a different hero, but also just funding going, their travel and hotels to events. They're going to call-ins and pro tours and nationals, etc. They'll sell cards. Who are buying these cards? Players aren't buying these promos for the most part. These cold foils, they're collectors and investors. And these collectors and investors will then buy them and collect them, etc. They get a good sort of relationship with the players. I know there's quite a few players that I have good relationship with, where I'll buy some of the stuff that they win from tournaments, from playing, and that helps them fund their travels, as well as also being able to buy other cards to their decks. And I also trade as well. So a lot of the staples, because I open a large amount of product, a lot of the staples that I get, I will trade. And I have done that for a couple of years now. And, I've been quite lucky that a lot of the people I've met have been really fantastic and welcoming. But I have seen through, not just through Discord, but on YouTube, on Facebook, I've even seen it going to card games. I've had people say it to me in person, actually, when I've purchased large amounts of packs from a store that was holding the product for at least 12 months and it wasn't selling. And then suddenly when I decide to buy, people aren't okay with that. But, and there's also going to be collectors that go, well, why do we need players? You need both, and you need investors as well. So for a card game to grow, you need a good even amount of all. We've seen in the past Flesh and Blood have majority player base, and we've also seen them having a majority collector investor base. So I think Flesh and Blood is in a really good way because it's kind of had the best of both, and I think it's middled out to a good level now. Well, we've got a still very high player base that's growing around the world. When we're getting that support in Southeast Asia, we've got that Japan roadmap. We've got South America, we're getting a bit more support there. Obviously Europe, we had the foreign languages as well. So we are seeing more players enter the game, and then we're also seeing more collectors and investors enter the game. A lot of people came from Magic the Gathering to Flesh and Blood, and there's a lot more people coming over from Magic the Gathering now to Flesh and Blood again. I see posts almost on the daily. I get people DM me on Discord. They message me on Instagram saying, oh, I'm coming over from Magic the Gathering. I'm going to be selling these. Here's my budget. What do you think I should buy? I'm always there to give advice. Obviously I'm not an expert with, markets and such. I'll give you my opinion based on my knowledge. Now, obviously, if you decide you want to act on that, that's absolutely fine. I've helped somebody recently. They were selling a lot of their Magic Gathering collection. They weren't deciding what they wanted to sure they'd buy, whether it was Alpha packs, Arcane Rising First Edition packs, or some cases of like WTR and Arc Unlimited. And they ended up pulling the trigger and buying some Alpha packs, which is fantastic. They got them from Fab Unsealed, which is Chris Sires, so shout out to them. They've got them in the bearish packs now, and they've got like the tamper proof and everything. So that for me is a really good option to get, because that they're from a big name in the community. That they're tamper proof. They're not weighed. They're even if somebody opens them and pulls the cold foil out of the box, for instance, you don't know what else is in them. So that is a really good option as well. And obviously I might do videos in the future. What I try not to do too much of is going, buy this, don't buy this. There is a lot of channels doing that already, and I don't think what I can provide can add to that already. There's some fantastic content creators out there already giving a really good advice for people that are entering Flesh and Blood, or people that are already in Flesh and Blood, whether or not they should buy certain cards, or what could go up in the future. Maybe it's something I'll do in the future, but for now I kind of like to talk more on a vague spectrum rather than specific cards. I think that's the kind of content that seems to work for my channel. So hope you've enjoyed this. Basically the sum up is, do we need collectors, players, investors? I think we do. Comment below what you think. You know, your opinion might be completely different. Having that discussion is really important, and I love having these discussions with people on YouTube, Discord, you know, and all the social medias. So thanks all for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe as always, and have a great day.